Now we've already looked at the verses. Did Jesus say to those guys in John chapter 2, when they ask for a sign, and what authority he casts the money changers out of the temple, and he says what? Destroy this temple and I will in 3 days do what? Look at Jonah chapter 1. Get caught up here. Jonah chapter 1, look at verse 17. Jonah chapter 1, verse 17. Now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish how long? 3 days and what? 3 nights. Now what did Jesus say to the Pharisees in Matthew chapter 12? He said he was going to give them the sign of the prophet who? Jonah. And he says that even as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights where? In the heart of the earth. Now that verse has serious implications for our next series of studies on the issue of hell. And we'll get to those verses in due time. That's not my main point here this morning. But Jonah chapter 1 verse 17 says that Jonah was swallowed by a great fish and that he was in the fish's belly how long? Now chapter 2 of Jonah. Verse 1. Then Jonah prayed unto the Lord his God out of where? The fish's belly. Verse 2. And said, I cried by reason of mine affliction unto the Lord. And he heard me, notice, out of the belly of where? Hell, cried I, and thou heardest my what? Hey, listen folks, when you learned about Jonah in Sunday school, you saw him as a little guy sitting in there in the fish's belly watching all the fish swim by. He died when that fish swallowed him. And he went where? Where did he cry out of in verse 2? He says, I cried out of the belly of what? Hell. Jonah dies, folks, and it's out of hell that he cries unto the Lord. You don't believe me? Go to verse 6. Look at what it says. He says, I went down to the bottoms of the mountains. The earth with her bars was about me forever. Yet thou hast brought me my life from where? Jonah what? Jonah dies. And he goes where? He goes to hell. And out of hell he cries to the Lord. And the Lord hears his what? And 3 days and 3 nights later, what happens to Jonah? He comes back to what? Jesus said, I'm not going to give you any other sign but the sign of the prophet who? Jonah. And even as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights where? In the heart of the earth. Verse 6 there says, look at verse 6 again, and I went down to the bottoms of the mountains. The earth with her bars was about me forever. Yet thou hast brought up my life from where? Corruption. He says in verse 2 that he cried out of the belly of hell. Come hold your hand there and come with me to Acts, or you can leave that. Come to Acts 2. When Jesus dies on the cross, folks, where does he go? Where does he go? He doesn't go straight to the presence of the Lord, does he? He goes where? You can say it. He goes to hell. Well, everyone's all, ooh. Everyone's getting all righteous in here this morning. Acts chapter 2. Look at verse 30. Therefore, being a prophet, and knowing that God had sworn with an oath to him, that of the fruit of his loins according to the flesh. Notice, he would raise up Christ to sit on his throne. Now look at verse 31. He, seeing this before, spake of the resurrection of who? Christ. Now notice what it says next. And that his soul was not left where? In hell, neither his flesh did see what? Why did Jesus' flesh not see corruption? Because he didn't stay what? He didn't stay dead. When Jonah cries out of the belly of hell, and he says that life was given to me out of my corruption, he's saying he was raised from what? And Jesus said, you want to understand who I am? I'll give you a sign. The sign I'm going to give you is the same thing that happened to Jonah there, is the same thing that's going to happen to who? And it all centers around resurrection. He said, I lay my life down, I do what? I take it back up. He said that if you destroy this temple, I will 3 days do what? Raise it back up. So the ultimate sign of who Jesus was is what? His resurrection from the dead. Now, I want to talk to you now, make some applications. I want to talk to you about three things. I want to talk to you about the pretext, the text, and the context. Come with me back to John 2. We see in John chapter 2, verse 18, the pretext of the skeptic. John chapter 2, verse 18 again. Then answered Jesus and said unto him, What sign showest thou... let me start over. Then the Jews said unto him, Then answered the Jews and said unto him, What sign showest thou unto us, seeing that thou doest these things? I want to talk to you first about the pretext of the skeptic. The skeptic says, I need more what? Proof before I can do what? The problem here with these folks is not that there hadn't been enough proof. Hold your hand there and come with me back to Matthew 12, please. Matthew 12. I should have told you to hold it. I'm sorry. Matthew chapter 12. Well, that's great that you believe that Christ rose from the dead, but you know what? I need to see it before I can what? Believe it. The pretext of the skeptic is in verse 18. What sign, what proof, what further authority are you going to give us when all of the proof, all of the authority was in living, breathing person in their midst, and they still didn't want to believe it? The problem was never that there wasn't enough proof. The problem was that their heart was so twisted and so deceived and so unwilling to accept the proof and accept the evidence that was already there, readily available, walking around in human flesh. And they say, what other sign are you going to what? Are you going to give us? Matthew 12, look at verse 41. Matthew 12, verse 41. Notice, this is in the same context of what we just read. I'm sorry I told you to leave this. Verse 41. Verse 40. For as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Verse 41. The men of Nineveh shall rise in judgment with this generation, and shall condemn it, because they repented at the preaching of Jonas, and behold, a greater than Jonas is what? The pagan Gentiles in the city of Nineveh repented and changed their mind with less proof than this generation in Israel had. They have the living, breathing Son of God incarnate in their midst, doing signs, wonders, and miracles, demonstrating the presence of the kingdom of God in their midst, and they still won't what? When the people of Nineveh had Jonah and his preaching, and that was it, and they did what? Repented.